This is breaking right now. Tom Homan in Minnesota with an update on a potential ICE drawdown. Let's have a listen.
During my press conference last week, I reported I had productive discussions with various state and local officials, including Governor, Attorney General Mayor Frey, and law enforcement officials about increasing coordination in a lawful way between the county jails and ICE to avoid public safety threats being released back in the community. While we had our differences, one thing was clear: we all committed to public safety for all who live in the Twin Cities. We have made significant progress under the direction of President Trump, working with state and local officials here in Minnesota.
This is exactly why Homan was brought in by Trump.
Weeks. We continue to have discussions. I'll have discussions this afternoon. We currently have an unprecedented number of counties communicating with us now and allowing ICE to take custody of illegal aliens before they hit the streets. Unprecedented cooperation.
That's awesome.
I'll say it again. This is efficient, requires only 1 or 2 officers to assume custody of a criminal alien target rather than 8 or 10 officers going into the community and arresting that public safety threat. This frees up more officers to arrest or remove criminal aliens. More officers taking custody of criminal aliens directly from the jails means less officers on the street doing criminal operations. This is smart law enforcement, not less law enforcement.
Exactly.
It's safer for the community, safer for the officers, and safer for the alien.
And this is all that Homan ever wanted.
Also makes
wanted
it far
access to
more
the
safe
jails.
For the Twin Cities. Arresting a public safety threat and the safety and security of a jail is the safest thing we could do.
Exactly.
Further, less public safety risks are being released back into the communities, reduces recidivism, so local law enforcement can direct their limited resources to other public safety matters in their community. This is another priority of President Trump. The state prisons already cooperate with ICE on this coordinated transfer of custody, and we thank them for that partnership, and we plan to do more with them. I also want to reiterate and emphasize we are not requiring jails to hold people past their normal release time for immigration purposes. We're not asking anyone to be an immigration officer.
Which has been one of the talking points of the left.
We're not asking any state or local official to do immigration enforcement activity. They are not. By merely notifying us before they release them, they don't hold them 1 minute past they normally would. Given this increase in unprecedented collaboration, and as a result of the need for less law enforcement officers to do this work in a safer environment, I have announced effective immediately we will draw down 700 people.
There you go.
Today.
What Walz wanted,
700 law enforcement
what
personnel.
Homan wanted, and Trump as well.
We have also fully integrated CBP personnel into the ICRO team structure under one unified chain of command. Not 2 chains of command. There'd be 1 chain of command here. Any large enforcement operation I've ever been involved with, there's 1 chain of command, and that's where we're moving forward. During my press conference last week, I announced that moving forward, ICE will be conducting targeted immigration enforcement operations, like ICE has traditionally done for decades, based on reasonable suspicion to question and detain. ICE will conduct these operations and transnational criminal organization investigations with a focus on national security and public safety. I want to be clear. Just because you prioritize public safety threats don't mean we forget about everybody else. We will continue to enforce the immigration laws in this country.
He's addressing each one of CNN and MSNBC's talking points. It's just dismantling them
operational framework that
from top to bottom.
Lines of effort, integrated enforcement, investigative and special response efforts. A unified joint operations center has been established to manage all operations and ensure efforts align with priorities of the mission. This reorganization also enables ICE to leverage joint intelligence capabilities to effectively target threats, as well as to reduce the overall personnel footprint and enhance public safety and confidence in the agency's capabilities and presence here. I have also ensured that officials from legal internal affairs offices remain on the ground as long as this operation continues. During our efforts to identify and implement improvements of how operations are planned, conducted, and managed, we identified a gap in regard to the use of body-worn cameras. And this was actually raised by the workforce when I started walking around talking to people here. Some officers and agents had them, some didn't. That inconsistency was unacceptable, so we moved immediately to prioritize full body cam deployment in the city. I discussed this with Secretary Noem.
Again, this was a talking point to the left. So body cameras are going to backfire on the left. We can assure you of that.
Nationwide.
When America sees what the protesters have really been doing to the ICE officials, I think they'll change their tune big time.
Spending bill to further fund the deployment of body cameras. The president is supportive of this decision because we have nothing to hide.
Exactly.
We want to be fully transparent in what we do. The American people seek and deserve professional and trustworthy law enforcement, and I and the president expect that any misconduct will not be tolerated and will be swiftly addressed. The integration, structuring, and resources we have implemented would help ensure accountability and that targeted enforcement operations have a focus on national security threats and public safety threats, and they are conducted effectively, safely, and appropriately. Again, this is smarter enforcement, not less enforcement. For those who are not a national security threat or public safety risk, you are not exempt from immigration enforcement actions. If you're in the country illegally, you are not off the table.
Which, incidentally, is one of the points that's been polling very well. The majority of Americans, both Democrats and Republicans, support this action.
And immigration enforcement actions will continue every day throughout this country. President Trump made a promise, and we have not directed otherwise. I heard rumors we have, untrue.
Rumors from
Given
fake
that
news
many
media.
public safety threats on our communities, many of which poured across the border during the Biden administration, it makes sense to prioritize public safety risks right now. Again, prioritization doesn't mean you forget about everybody else. But we have a criminal here and non-criminal here. The criminal has to be arrested first because they're the biggest threat to the community. My goal with the support of President Trump is to achieve a complete drawdown and end this surge as soon as we can. But that is largely contingent upon the end of the illegal and threatening activities against ICE and its federal partners that we're seeing in the community.
This is a critical point. He just put the monkey back on Walz and Jacob Fry. You guys start to control your citizens.
So we will not draw down
but
on
not
personnel
until then.
providing security and responding to hostile incidents until we see a change in what's happening.
Exactly my point.
With the lawlessness of the impeding and interfering and assaulting
the ball's in their court.
Of ICE and Border Patrol officers. It is against the law to forcibly assault, resist, oppose, impede, intimidate, and interfere with federal law enforcement, including ICE officers and Border Patrol agents. Doxing law enforcement to threaten them and their families because they're executing their sworn duties to enforce immigration law that Congress passed is unacceptable. And it's shameful and incomprehensible to me that this unlawful and threatening behavior is being tolerated by anyone.
Exactly right. The majority of Americans, again, agree on that point.
What I saw yesterday, the roadblocks being set up, you're not going to stop ICE. You're not going to stop Border Patrol. The only thing you're doing is irritating your community and want to go get groceries or pick their children up or whatever.
This is going to backfire on the left. There's no question about it. It might not fully in Minnesota because they're so progressive and left, but the majority of Americans agree, and the majority of Americans are watching what's happening here.
Continued cooperation of local and state law enforcement and the decrease of the violence, the rhetoric, and the attacks against ICE and Border Patrol. The federal law enforcement personnel, ICE and CBP, and other partner agencies are patriots. And
Amen.
And they've carried out their duties patriotically, with integrity, with professionalism, and compassion. I've said this many times. These men and women don't hang their heart on a hook when they come to work. President Trump and I strongly stand with them in the critical work they do to prevent harmful or otherwise dangerous people from entering or remaining in this country. As part of the surge operation here, numerous criminal aliens have already been arrested. We've arrested 14 people who had homicide convictions, 139 people with sex-related offenses, 28 gang members. Correct me, 139 assault convictions, 87 sex offenses, 28 gang members have been arrested, just to name a few. We're taking a lot of bad people off the street. Everybody should be grateful to that.
I agree.
Who in the right
Mayor
mind
Fry, are you grateful?
Walking around their
Tim
communities?
Walz?
Everyone has a constitutional right to peacefully protest. President Trump and I, we completely support that. At the same time, professional law enforcement officers should and need to be able to perform their sworn duties without being harassed, impeded, or assaulted. I want anyone to report instances of alleged misconduct or wrongdoing. There's a way to report that. The Trump administration is taking violations of 18 U.S.C. 111, which is assaulting, impeding, interfering. We're taking that seriously. If you violate the law, you will be federally prosecuted. In the past month, 158 people have been arrested for violation of 111. 85 cases have been already accepted.
It's breaking news right there.
The rest
158 people have been arrested that have been getting in the way and impeding ICE.
And additional cases are being worked.
That Tim Walz and Mayor Fry are encouraging them.
I've been saying this for almost a year now. Hateful, extreme rhetoric against ICE personnel is completely unacceptable. Please stop. I said back in March of this year, if the hateful rhetoric didn't stop, I was afraid there would be bloodshed. And there has been. President Trump and I, Secretary Noem, none of us want to see any bloodshed. It is no doubt encouraging and inciting certain people to violate the law, wanting to harm and actually harm law enforcement, their families, is unacceptable.
And it's on Fry, and it's on Walz.
I want to say I appreciate the discussions had with the governor, Mayor Fry, and the Attorney General. We've had frank, honest discussions. We don't agree on everything, but we do agree on the need for public safety. And we do agree that ICE has a role to enforce the immigration laws of this country. I would implore the governor and the AG and the mayor and other political officials to urge in the most strong and urgent way to ask for calm in the community and to end the resistance, the impediment, the interference, again, protest. But stop impeding, stop interfering, stop violating the law, because we will arrest you. In closing, President Trump and I would like to thank the men and women of ICE, Border Patrol, and other federal agencies on the ground here for your dedication to the oath you swore to enforce the federal laws and promote public safety through the work you do. That hasn't been easy. I know the sacrifices you made. I know the sacrifices your families make. I know your families worry about you every day. I know you've been away from birthdays and anniversaries and holidays. I appreciate every one of you. I wore that green uniform. I love the United States Border Patrol. I was an ICE agent. I know the job you have. I know the tragedies you've seen. The President is with you. Again, I want to thank Governor Walz, Attorney General, and Mayor for the candid, insightful, productive discussions we had. Again, I'm not saying we agree on everything, but I think we all already accomplished great things in Minnesota. I am optimistic we will achieve even more in the coming days to make this city safer. I would also like to thank the numerous local law enforcement officials I was able to meet with the last 9 days since I arrived here. I appreciate hearing from local law enforcement, their perspective on what's happening. I appreciate the desire to enhance communications between their agencies and our agencies, and that communication has been vastly improved. I truly appreciate your commitment to respond to federal law enforcement in a time of need. Every chief I talked to, every one of them, promised to respond to any public safety issue when our officers out doing their sworn duty.
That was not happening earlier.
And people start crossing the line. And
no doubt that Homan is the right guy for this. He has come in and set the tone.
Every police chief has committed to doing their job and enforce public safety. We talked to a lot of sheriffs throughout the nation. We have unprecedented cooperation. I've yet to talk to a sheriff that said no. There's still more sheriffs we are in discussions with and talking to, but I have not heard no. I think they want to do the right things for the communities too. Lastly, I'd like to thank President Trump for his steadfast leadership and commitment to law enforcement, public safety, and prosperity. I've said this many times. I've worked for 6 presidents and 10 administrations. When it comes to public safety, border security, immigration enforcement, no one's done it better than President Trump. His success is unprecedented. Later on today, Secretary Noem is having a press conference on our southern border, the most secure border in the history of this nation, because of the leadership of President Trump and the men and women over there wearing a green uniform. Most secure border in the history of this country, which means less children are dying making that journey, less women and children being sex trafficked, less fentanyl getting in this country to kill our young people, less known suspected terrorists being released in this country. The most secure border in a lifetime gives us the strongest national security we've seen. You can't have strong national security without strong border security. I wish I could be at that press conference, but the president has called me here. I just had a small part in it. The reason we have the most secure border is because of President Trump's leadership and the men and women wearing the green uniform, which I once wore. I just reported, I was down there with Commissioner Scott, CBP Commissioner Scott, 2 weeks ago. We went through that border in boat, forward drive, and in the air. We toured the border in California, Texas, and Arizona. And I did not see one illegal alien. Think about that. The last 9 months, no one's been released from that border. The most secure border in history of this nation. So God bless the men and women of the Border Patrol. God bless President Trump for his leadership. And God bless the United States of America.
So we'll leave it at that. And I want to bring to the talking points and to the comments here on this video. So definitely get involved. Really 2 points. Tom Homan was brought in by Donald Trump to lower the temperature. And I think we can see from this news conference that he's done just that. He's aligned local leadership, local law enforcement, and gotten behind and has commitments now from AG Ellison in Minnesota as well as Governor Walz. This was critical Critical. Just think 10 days ago and now where we are 10 days later with Tom Homan's leadership. The second thing is there's no question that Tom Homan is the right man at the right time. You can see his demeanor, his tone, and the facts that he's bringing to his arguments. These aren't emotional arguments, these are facts. But the other thing that's critical, and this is what I want to hear again from you in the comments, Minnesota, specifically Minneapolis, was a test ground for George Soros and the aggressive, extreme progressive left. They wanted to see this fail. They wanted to see Homan fail. Because when they have that experiment and that data and they see the techniques that work, they're going to deploy them in Denver, LA, Chicago, New York, etc. Every single one of the sanctuary cities, every one of the blue states, the major cities within the blue states. What Tom Homan and President Trump just did is they took that argument away from them. It was a critical piece. Because now, if you were thinking of this, right, if you're Karen Bass out in LA, or if you're Mondami in New York City, what you just saw in this news conference is not what you wanted to see. You wanted to see a continued escalation and continued chaos. And that's not what you're getting out of Tom Homan. Brought the temperature down and brought the facts. So the question is, what will Mondami do when ICE and Border Patrol come to New York City? What will the progressive mayor in Chicago do with the same? LA, etc. Homan took one of their major strategies going into 2026 in the midterms, took their strategy and one of their talking points away in 10 days. I want to hear what you think in the comments down below. What do you think of Tom Homan coming in and setting the tone in Minneapolis? Let me know your thoughts. Am I wrong in my observations? Secondly, if you've yet to subscribe, please do so. We'd love to have you along for the ride here at America First Alerts. We have news conferences, news like this, commentary and opinion every single day. We'd love to have you along for the ride. We'll see you in the next video.
We won! Okay, let's go.